Hey, warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. We've got a superb podcast for you. It's another conference preview podcast. We are going into the Mountain West today. It is going to be a lot of fun because this is very much a new look conference. We've got a lot of new members, but we are going to piece it together. We're going to have ourselves some hope in terms of piecing this great conference together in segment number 2 with one of our good friends, Austin Montgomery. He does amazing work over at Mid-Major Madness. The people of Mid-Major Madness, by the way, have been instrumental with these conference previews, so do appreciate them. For Austin, we're going to dive in on all 10 of these rosters that we've got within the conference, take a look at a few of the coaching changes that we've had, especially with Air Force, and take a look at how things might be a little bit different here in the Mountain West this year than they have been in the past. In the final segment, I'm going to get you guys my projector or finish for the Mountain West, and then here in the first segment, we're going to be taking a look at the betting trends and the styles of play that we've got in this fine conference. If you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. And with regards to these conference preview podcasts, I always leave them as standalone podcasts because I do want to make sure that they get as much sparkle and shine as humanly possible. So anything that I may have missed over the weekend with regards to news and notes in college basketball, and we are seeing a trillion court cases right now, I will sum those up on the podcast tomorrow, so have no fear there. But let's get down to business and let's take a look at a Mountain West that is certainly going to be very much new look, because with the Mountain West, you had a lot of slower tempo teams last season that they leave, like San Diego State being out of the fold. They were always a team that played a little bit more slowly. Now, last year they actually cranked up their tempo a little bit. It's going to be a bit of a new look with the teams that are going to be coming in. Now, Hawaii traditionally is a very slow team. Last year, they played uncharacteristically fast en route to the NCAA tournament out there in the Big West. They were 21st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Typically, they clock in outside the top 200, though, so it'll be interesting to see if that continues. UC Davis was also relatively fast as well. Typically, they're a little bit more of a mid-tempo team. Last year, they were a team that was clocking in the top 50 in terms of total possessions per game. And then you've got the UTEP Miners, a team that has been under Joe Golding, typically playing a little bit more slowly. Last year, they were 306th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Typically, they're a little bit faster than this, but certainly not a team that's going to be looking to run it and gun it. And I think that they're going to acclimate themselves very well with a conference full of teams that typically they play a little bit more slowly. Now, Grand Canyon over the last few years has been playing a little bit faster, got more in a mid-tempo pace last year, 202nd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. And then for New Mexico, they were a team that was looking to play a little bit more faster than I anticipated as well. 108th in the country in terms of total possessions per game, a little bit faster than how Eric Olin usually plays over at UC San Diego, but certainly they were able to find their bearings. Then you get into Nevada, a team that typically is a little bit more slow under Coach Alford, 251st in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Josh Passer brought the tempo over at UNLV last year. They were up to 68th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Wyoming under Sundance Wicks, no surprise here. They were a team that was very much looking to slow it down. 253rd in the country in terms of total possessions per game. But for Old St. Josie State under Tim Miles, 320th in terms of total possessions per game. And Air Force is just always slow. 276th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. They're now going to be under the tutelage of Joe Crispin, who comes over from Penn State, but they've got much of that roster back from a season ago, so still a team that I think is going to be relatively slow and controlled. And when it comes to this conference, you've got quite a few teams that they hang their hat on defense, and you do have some suspect offense. Obviously, Air Force by far the biggest suspect offense, 363rd in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. Just a skid mark on the underpants of college basketball last year. There's no other way of putting it. And then one of your newcomers in UTEP, they were a team that they really struggled on offense last year. They were 324th in the country in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. For UC Davis, they really pride themselves on generating turnovers. Offense left a little bit of something to be desired last year, 228th in the country in terms of points per possession. Grand Canyon, an amazing defense, top 30 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. They were 126th in terms of points per possession on offense. I do feel like they were able to do a relatively solid job there, but still, you do have a few question marks on that front. And then additionally, you've got a team in Nevada that they did a great job in terms of getting to the free throw line. That led to them to being a top 100 team in terms of points per possession. They clocked in at number 95 for UNLV. things were able to come together for them a little bit more late. Year number one was a bit janky under Josh Pastner early, but got better as the season went along. They were 128th in the country in terms of points per possession. New Mexico is probably your most balanced team in this conference. 61st in terms of points per possession on offense, top 50 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, so they very much did a nice job there. For Hawaii, they were another team that was very much based around defense, 181st in the country in terms of points per possession, and for Wyoming, just very rough for them on offense. Defense was a calling card for them. They were 87th in terms of points per possession, but you could tell that there was a big fall off towards the end of the year, so that was interesting to say the least. And for San Jose State, just a lot of injuries for them. 187th in the country in terms of points per possession. Well, you'll also notice in this conference, lots of teams that do not give you a second chance. In terms of defensive rebound percentage, you didn't have any teams quite be able to crack the top 15 or anything like that from the previous year, but you have Hawaii who's coming in that they were 12th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Grand Canyon, they were 24th in the country's teams, only rebounded 24.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. Nevada was 43rd. Teams only grabbed about 25.2% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. Now you've got UTEP joining you. They were not necessarily the strongest team there, 308th in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage. And then for UC Davis, they were allowing teams to grab about 29% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound. Neither here nor there. 215th in all of college basketball with that regard. For UNLV, they're right on par with that. They were 212th with regards to defensive rebound percentage. I think San Jose State is going to be a whole heck of a lot better than they were a season ago. Last year, they got destroyed on the glass. They allowed opponents to grab 35% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, 353rd. Again, a little bit of a throwaway in my opinion because they had so many injuries from a season ago. And then with this Wyoming Cowboys team, they were a team that was 51st in terms of defensive rebound percentage. Some big home and road splits with them. And when it comes to three-point shooting within the conference, you tell that there were a lot of teams that left something to be desired. Wyoming, 234th in the country, shooting about 33% from three. That went all the way down to 30.1% when they were away from home. Grand Canyon, that was their big kryptonite, just 286th in the country with their three-point shooting percentage. UTEP has always been an up-and-down three-point shooting team under Joe Golding. Last year, they shot about 34% from three. They were another team that had some big home and road splits. Just with this conference in general, I think that you're going to be seeing a lot of that this season. Nevada, solid three-point shooting team, 70th in the country, 35.8%. UNLV was 102nd, and they actually shot much better away from home rather than at home with their three-point shooting at 35.2%. Top 75 team when they were away from home. Then for New Mexico, again, a very balanced team. They were a team that shot about 35.6% from three-point range, 83rd in all of college basketball. San Jose State, they're actually a solid three-point shooting team at 35.3%, had some home and road splits of their own. Our newcomer in UC Davis, they were about 149th. They shot 34.4% from three, again, 37.6% at home, 31.9% away from home. And for Hawaii, they were a team that very much looked to pound it down low. They shot just 31.7% from three-point range, 298th in the country, and the St. Sheriff Center is always a really bad three-point shooting environment. Shot just 29.5% from three-point range at home. And when it comes to the betting trends that you've got within the Mountain West, not really going to be looking in terms of just the conference itself, because if you try to look within the conference, well, half the teams that were in the Mountain West last year, they are now gone, so that's a little bit of an issue, but you did have some bankroll building teams in this conference. Nevada was relatively solid, 22-15 against the spread. New Mexico, they were 19-16 against the spread. UNLV was an even up 17-17. Grand Canyon, 17-15 against the spread. Your big giant slug, gosh, it was a terrible season for them. Air Force, 10-21-1 against the spread. They actually had a halfway decent start to the season. Then in conference play, they were one of the worst teams in all of college basketball in terms of covering spreads. So that was a little bit of an issue. You take a look at some of the newcomers, and for the Rainbow Warriors of Hawaii, despite making the NCAA tournament, they were just 13-18 against the spread. UC Davis, 17-14-1 against the spread. So a mildly profitable team. And then out there in Conference USA for UTEP, it was just a little bit of a janky year for them, 13-15 against the spread. And you just take a look at how these teams did away from home, and I think that that's going to be a big key. UTEP, they were 7-6 against the spread away from home last year, so relatively respectable there. You take a look at the natural Mountain West teams, they're back from a season ago, and a lot of these teams did have some struggles away from home. Wyoming was 5-9 against the spread away from home. Air Force 5-6-1 against the spread. Now you did have San Jose State, Nevada, both go 7-6 against the spread away from home. For UNLV, 8-6, and then New Mexico, they were 7-5 against the spread. Your best team was actually Grand Canyon. They were 7-4 against the spread, and I think the big commonality with these teams doing so well away from home last year is that this seems like it's going to be very much an underdog conference this season with Grand Canyon against the spread as a underdog. They were 5-5. San Jose State, they were 12-14 against the spread as an underdog. And again, Air Force, they were your just big giant flaming turd, 9-20-1 against the spread as an underdog. But hey, New Mexico was 6-3 against the spread as an underdog. Nevada was 10-5 against the spread as an underdog. You did have Wyoming go just 6-8 against the spread as an underdog. And then you'll look at some of the newcomers with the Rainbow Warriors of Hawaii. They against the spread as an underdog, 2-3. They just didn't find themselves in that role very much. UC Davis, 8-9 against the spread as an underdog. And you look at how these two teams did away from home Hawaii. They're always just a little bit more comfortable when they're on the island. Wasn't too bad of a split though. 5-6 against the spread when they were away from home for UC Davis, and even up 7-1 against the spread there. And in terms of the totals with this conference, I think that it's going to be very intriguing because you take a look at the two teams that are coming in from the Big West. Hawaii was a good under team, 18 unders to 13 overs. And then for UC Davis, they were a good over team, 18 overs to 14 unders. When it comes to Conference USA, UTEP over the last few seasons under Joe Golding, they've been a team that's been a little bit more to the under. That was the case last year, 12 overs, 15 unders, and a push. They were actually the best team in Conference USA to the under, where you didn't have a lot of under teams out there in that conference. And when it comes to the teams that are returning to the Mountain West, the best over team that is returning, New Mexico, 23 overs to 12 unders. Eric Olin played a little bit faster than he did over at UC San Diego. I feel like bookmakers really had a tough time being able to catch up to that. San Jose State, just because their defense was atrocious with all the injuries, 21 overs, 11 unders. Air Force, 19 overs, 13 unders. This is traditionally a little bit more of an under conference, but we saw a lot of overwhelming teams, and a lot of the over teams are back from season ago. The lone team that returns from the Mountain West that was hitting more unders than overs, Grand Canyon, 13 overs, 18 unders, and a push. You saw Wyoming going even up 16-16 with their overs and their unders. Nevada was 21 overs to 16 unders, and we will boil it down with this one with regards to conference games and conference games only. And there were only three teams that played more unders than overs in conference play. Wyoming, 11 unders to 10 overs. Obviously, Fresno State is gone, 13 unders to 8 overs. And then Grand Canyon, 12 overs to 9 unders. You saw San Jose State play 16 overs to 6 unders. Air Force, 15 overs to 6 unders. Defense just completely evaporated on them. New Mexico, 15 overs to 6 unders. UNLV, 14 overs to 8 unders. Nevada, 13 overs to 10 unders. So, it was an overwhelming conference last year, and I think that could lead to a little bit of value with the unders, just given the circumstances with this conference and not having necessarily the world's greatest three-point shooting team. So those are the styles of play and betting trends of the Mountain West coming next. How about if we do take a look at all 10 of these rosters and the nooks and crannies of the Mountain West with our good friend Austin Montgomery of Mid-Major Madness right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast, the Mountain West Conference Preview Edition. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSiN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSiN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSiN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSiN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSiN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSiN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. This is the Mountain West Conference Preview Edition, and great to have this man aboard, as we've got Austin Montgomery joining me. He does such a great job with Mid-Major Madness, and we've been having a lot of the guys for Mid-Major Madness on with these podcasts, these conference preview podcasts, because they do such great work over there. I know that for Austin, he's holding it down right out here on the West Coast, much like myself. I know he does a little bit of work with our good friend Aaron Torres, who also does a tremendous job looking at this great game of college basketball as well. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at the letter A, last name Montgomery live all together. And Austin, it's great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Greg, thank you for having me on. College basketball season is coming right around the corner. We got football first, but it's never too early to get into some hoops action. The Mountain West, it's ever changing. It's the new era of college sports. You have a new look Mountain West, but I think it's still going to be great as ever. And I think with some of the new teams coming in. I think it's going to be a really fun league this year. So I'm really excited to get into it.
Absolutely. As our good friend Rocco Miller says, it's sort of like Saved by the Bell. You're going to have some different characters and everything like that. Maybe you're not going to have as much Kelly, but you're still going to have like Lisa Turtle and stuff. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And hey, when it comes to this team, because we've got a lot of fifth year guys, we've got a lot of hoopla with the rosters. We don't have a lot of that with Air Force. Air Force just have a new coach in Joe Crispin, who's going to be coming on over from Penn State, but it's relatively the same roster from a year ago. I think that they should be a little bit better than last year because, quite frankly, it really couldn't get worse than last year. But I think the question is, how much talent is there coming back that they can be any better than what they were last year? Because it was one of the most rough years that we've seen for any Mountain West team in quite some time.
With Air Force, it's just with this, they can lose a lot in the portal, but they can't really gain much back. But thankful for them, they do return three double-digit scorers in Cam Sanders, Lucas Hoban, and Caleb Walker. They went 0-20 in the conference last year. So I think if you're able to win a few games in the conference and with the new teams, I think there are some winnable games there. I think that's going to be a success, but yeah, Joe Crispin coming in from Penn State. He has a lot of work. It's one of the hardest jobs in college basketball, and we just kind of wish the best for him because it's a big mountain to climb. It's a big mountain to climb, and I think they'll be better than they were last year. I think they'll be more competitive. The average scoring margin per game last year, they lost each game by an average of 17 points, so they weren't even in the vicinity. I think they'll be more competitive. Maybe win a couple games in conference. They haven't released their non-conference schedule yet, so maybe get some bye games in there. New coach, schedule some maybe non-D1. So at least just get the confidence up for this team. But they'll be better, but a long hill to climb. But the standard's not really much there yet for Air Force.
Yeah, if they win 2 or 3 games in conference, that needs to be looked at as a success this year, in my opinion. So I'm right there with you. And then you mentioned there are a few teams out there in the conference that are new, and UTEP now joins the conference. It is out there in Texas, but relatively close to New Mexico. So not as much travel as if you were trying to go to a different end of Texas or something like that. But want to get your thoughts here because they have to replace 100% of their minutes from a season ago, so no doubt about it. Going to be a new look team after they struggled a little bit on offense. I like some of these guys like Leaf Mueller coming in. They've got a guy coming in, and Alex, I'm going to get this last name incorrect, Koto, hopefully I got that correct. We're relatively close. And then I like the William and Mary guys that they bring in to be able to help out that backcourt as well.
With bringing all these transfers, the style Joe Golding plays, it's a very aggressive, they want to turn you over, very fast-paced type of basketball. Donovan, I think it's Priestess' name, is a 4-star guard from San Antonio. I think he'll be the bright spot for this team this year. They bring in an athletic forward, Reed Kaysen from ECU, that has some length and some athleticism, and that's kind of the way UTEP has to play. They just have to play scrappy, make the other teams beat themselves. And in the conference where they're not really used to that style of play, I think they can upset a few teams just based on just the way they play. Joe Golding was really good at ACU. He hasn't been great at UTEP yet. They've had some good years, but they were pretty bad last year. 11-20, bottom 75 in offense and defense on KenPom. They couldn't really do anything right. And the Conference USA was a pretty bad conference last year. They're going to be stepping up in class. Joe Golding hit the reset button. Let's get a whole new roster and let's try to plug it away and see how it goes.
Yep, it's going to be interesting to see because they did spend a little bit more NIL this offseason. Jace Whiting should be coming in as well. I'm pretty bullish on him. And then when it comes to these guys, they always have such a great home court advantage because having to go up a mile plus in elevation over there at Wyoming, that's always very difficult. And love the fact that they bring back their top 2 rebounders, Caden Bennett, Nasir Meyer. It was a relatively balanced team, and they've got Oriah Rojas coming in as well. Didn't bring in a ton via the transfer portal. Parker Garrett's, I think, is an interesting guy. Want to get your thoughts here on Wyoming because there's no doubt about it. Sundance Wicks is a very solid coach. It always feels like he does more with less, but at the same time as well, would have liked to see him maybe sign another guy or two in the transfer portal.
I am very bullish on this Wyoming team. They're 14-4 at home last year, so a really tough place to play at home. I think they bring back a guy named Nasir Meyer, and he comes from my neck of the woods, and he's super talented, 6'7", shot the ball 35% from 3, 12 points a game. He can jump out of the gym. funny personal story. I was playing COVID basketball in 2020. There's nothing to do in California. Everything's locked down, Greg. Like you can't do anything. So there are some athletic guys there, like big, like grown men. And this seventh, eighth grader comes onto the court and just kind of dominates the game. That eighth grader at the time was Nasir Meyer, and he's grown. I think he's gonna be my dark horse Mountain West Player of the Year because Wyoming's going to ask him to do a lot. He's probably the main scorer on this team, a high usage rate last year, and was very good as a freshman. Wyoming kind of brings back another young guy, Gavin Gores. He's another forward that they're going to need a lot of help from in the front court. Neil Summers is a Laramie guy. He's a redshirt freshman. He's going to need to step up. But I think Wyoming, playing with the advantages they have at home, Sundance Wicks is a great coach. Like you said, he always gets more than what his teams are projected to be. But I think he does have, I think they're one star power away, one more star away, but at least they have a guy that can really create his own shot, score the basketball, capable 18 to 20 point a game scorer. I think Meyer's a talent that you can easily see in the Power Five next year, but he's a very loyal kid. He played at a really small high school, took him to heights that they never seen, and played some really top Southern California talent when he was a prep. So he's kind of been in like smaller programs per se. And I think what Sundance Wicks uses him, I think it fits him. So expect Wyoming's kind of like my dark horse team. You put them earlier in the pod, but I have them finishing top 6 in the conference. I'm really high on Wyoming this year.
Yep, I do think that with Wyoming, Sundance Wicks is going to be able to get them to play so hard. And I always love taking a look at that team at home because you mentioned it, that elevation. They're a team that they always do have some pretty big home and road splits. If they can pick off some of those games away from home, going to be a good season for them. As joining me here on the podcast, we've got Austin Montgomery, does such great work over at Mid-Major Madness. Joining me for the Mountain West Conference Preview Edition right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And this team, I think, is going to take some strides forward. For San Jose State, it was a Murphy's Law season last year. It felt like everyone not named Kobe Garland got hurt for them. Javon Hanna was limited to 2 games. He comes back for the team. They now get back Robert Viola as well after he was over at Minnesota last year. Had a great year for them a few years ago. I'm going to get this name incorrect, but Zunu Endi Bedri, who comes over from Columbia, is solid. And then if they can get a full season out of Mookie Cook, I don't think San Jose State goes into like the top 5 or anything like that, but I see a lot of upside for the Spartans, and I've always liked Tim Miles as a coach.
Yeah, Tim Miles is a really good coach, coached in the Power Five in Nebraska for a long time. They upset Boise State in the conference tournament a year ago as a pretty big underdog. I don't remember what the line was or anything like that, but they're a pretty big underdog. Had a top 5 finish a couple years ago. So I think they can make some noise. Like you said, Mookie Cook, top recruit out of Oregon, transferred to San Francisco last year, showed some flashes, but wasn't really consistent. I think being kind of like the center of the offense, and we can really see what the potential he has. They get another transfer, Scotty Middleton, 6'6", big athletic forward. Pasha Gudrazi, totally messed up his last name. His dad's the CEO of Intuit. Really good shooter, averaged 8 points a game last year. Really good role player that can be good for them. So there's some pieces, little bits and pieces that they have, but yeah, long hill to climb. They can probably get some wins on the schedule against some of these newer teams. And what Tim Miles does with the resources he has at San Jose State in this era of NIL is pretty impressive based on what he has to deal with.
Yep, I'm right there with you. And how about if we take a look at that other newcomer in the conference, and that'd be UC Davis. And for UC Davis, they're going to have a little bit of camaraderie coming back from a season ago. I believe that they should be getting back Connor Sevilla, who was giving them 13 points per game. Braden Fajemi, he was a guy that was able to dole it out a little bit. Isaiah Chappelle, Niles Cooper, these are relatively solid pieces. And you mentioned it with UTEP. UC Davis is another one of those teams that generates a lot of turnovers. Top 30 team in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis last year. The question I have for this team is really down low. You've got Chappelle at 6'9", Alex Smotrich. He's had a long and winding road, has been just really glued to the bench over at some bigger schools. What he's going to be able to do is a little bit TBD. Want to get your thoughts here because out of the newcomers in this conference, I think that UC Davis has a much better chance to be able to pick off some teams than UTEP, but do think that that might be more towards the bottom half of the conference for them as well as they try to reacclimate to a new conference.
I think the style of play is kind of the biggest difference. Like the Big West is a guard league, and they have 2 guards, like you said, coming back. But I think they'll be better than most of the newcomers. I think they have more talent than UTEP. They're up there with Hawaii. they competed in the Big West together last year, but I think this team's going to have some confidence. They play 8 home games in the non-con. Easy way to kind of build confidence into conference play. They run a good program up there. They have decent NIL money for the school that they have. So being able to play 8 home games in the non-conference, get some confidence up, get some wins under their belt, I think will put them in a good position. Hopefully have their Ken Palm a little higher than what they normally would. But as far as competing with the bigger teams, I think they're going to have a tough road, which is the athleticism that Nevada provides GCU. They're going to struggle a little bit, but with their guard play, man, when guards get hot and they can score, you can be competitive almost any game, and they do have that.
Yep, I do think so as well. And then how about if we do take a look at that other newcomer in Hawaii? They were the team that made the NCAA tournament out there in the Big West last season. No question about it. It's a new look team, but I know that legislation was passed out there in the state of Hawaii that gave them some NIL, and I'm pretty impressed with the guys that they're bringing in the transfer portal. Chance Jajulo, he comes over from Utah Tech after he was a good scorer. Bull Dango is a guy that I really look at. I liked him over at UC San Diego last year. And then Marcus Adams, 2 years ago at CSUN, guy was a 16-point per game scorer. Zach Davidson, he was over at Northern Arizona, but you do lose the heart and soul of that team. I believe 4 of their top 5 scorers, including Big Fish Johnson. So want to get your thoughts here on Hawaii because I like Arun Ganot as a coach. I really like the style that Hawaii plays. I do think that they're going to need to slow it down after, in my opinion, they did play a little bit too fast for their own good last year.
They have that no-help defense, right? And I think Marcus Adams, he's, like you said, he was a 16-point scorer at CSUN and really helped turn that program around. Isaac Johnson was the heart and soul of that team in the middle. So having a big man that can score, but also be a really big presence on the defensive end, I think that's what they're going to lose the most. But I think Hawaii's kind of like the glue to this conference. Like for the Mountain West to be a too big league, I think Hawaii has to be really good. I think that's the path. Because they're the middle of the road team. They have to be a top 100 Ken Palm team at minimum. I think they're like low 100s last year, if I remember correctly. But they do have a little bit more NIL, like you said. It's a desirable location where you play in Honolulu. And they have a really great coach. And I think they're a really big addition to this league. Zach Davidson's really good. He's the stretch forward, back to the basket scorer who can shoot the three a little bit. So this might be a down year for them. They won't be as good as last year, but I think there will be a building block in the conference going forward.
Yep, I think so as well. And I've got them more towards the middle of the conference. So to your point, if the middle of the conference has a top 100 team like Hawaii, I think that it's a good sign for the Mountain West as they go through a bit of transition. As we're joined by Austin Montgomery, he does such great work over at Mid-Major Madness. Join me for the Mountain West Conference Preview Edition here on Coast to Coast Soups. And then this team I think is intriguing because, well, I'm based out in Henderson, technically right over by UNLV with the Runnin' Rebels. I like some of the pieces that they bring in the transfer portal. No doubt about it, when you lose a guy like a Dre Gibbs Lawhorn, that's rough, but Sebastian Mack was a 12-point per game scorer to begin his career over at UCLA. Tyler Harris, if he can get back to shooting 49.5% from three like he did at Washington, we're really staring at something. And I've always been an Allen Breed guy. He's always had such bad luck with the injuries, what have you. If he can get out there on the floor, I think UNLV has a path to perhaps being a top 3 team in this conference.
They definitely have the talent, but it depends how fast Josh Pastern gets the money he wants, right? He offered the $10 million a year.
He's wanted to sell the program.
10 million. I think when he lost Gibbs Lawhorn, he was like, man, I need more money. Like, I think he wished he would have asked for that earlier and gotten it, and they really would have been a contender. But I do like the team. I think it's a typical UNLV team, a lot of athleticism. Sebastian Mack, great playmaker. Top scorer at UCLA, Tyler Harris, a really good stretch forward who can probably be one of the best transfers in this conference, which is his upside, right? With his athleticism, his shooting. Jeremy Fonuma from UCF, 6'11" center. Cam Miles got some playing time as a freshman at Florida State. He comes to UNLV. So there's some talent on this team. There's a lot of upside. How they mix it all together in the team chemistry, we'll see. They also got a pretty good recruit I've heard a lot about, Coda Settle, originally out of Georgia, but played at SoCal Academy in LA. That's a guy that can maybe contribute as a freshman. We'll find out about UNLV early, though. They play Kansas at the New Players Era tournament in November. They go at San Diego State, at San Francisco. They play SMU in Phoenix. And then they also open up conference at GCU. So we'll see if they're a top team in this league. And And with their schedule they have, if they win some games in the non-conference, they win a couple games in the players era. Who can say this can't be an at-large team with the upside they have and the schedule that they play? So Pastner did a really good job making that schedule, and this team has a lot of upside for sure.
Yep, I do think that there might be the team with the highest ceiling and the lowest floor in this conference personally, because if it goes right, it can really go right. And if it goes wrong, we saw what happened in the Big Gang part of the season last year for UNLV as well. And we'll stay out here in the state of Nevada because the Wolfpack love the fact that they bring back Elijah Price. Was so good down low for them. Previously, he was with Fresno State. Goodbye to Fresno State in this conference. But he's rock solid, like Von Weems out there in the backcourt. And Styles Phipps. He began his career, if I'm not mistaken, over at Grand Canyon. Didn't see a lot of minutes there. And while Pepperdine was not good, he was doing everything for them. And he was a relatively solid player as well. I do have a little bit of question mark with some of the guys coming in off the bench, but Peter Benjel, hopefully you got that correct, coming over from Cal Poly, like him. And for Nevada, I think they should be in the top half of the conference, maybe not competing in like the top 2 or top 3, but I think with Nevada, with Steve Alford, he's done a great job of providing a low floor. I think that this team is going to be rock solid down low.
They have probably, outside of Jake Hall, they have the second best player in the conference in Elijah Price, right? 12.8 points a game, 8.5 rebounds, 1.7 blocks. The best interior player in the league, probably the best two-way player in the league. Being able to keep him was a huge get for Steve. Von Weems was a great guy off the bench, double-digit scorer. They're going to ask him to play a lot bigger role. They get Cedric Glass, who kind of has been sitting on the bench for Houston for a while. He's a fifth-year senior. Finally gets he'll compete with Simon Majoff, the Memphis transfer. Totally butchered the name. But like he has Peter Benji, he was really good at Cal Poly. They played a very up-tempo, 7 seconds or less offense and up and slow. Nevada doesn't go as fast, but they do like to spread the floor out. This team is kind of lacks shooting. Like most Alford teams don't lack shooting. This team does. He's their best shooter by far. He shot 34% from 3 last year, but he shot like 100, almost 173s last year. He was a very high volume, not always the best looks. I think if he can shoot up closer to 40%, he can be really good. Phillips was really good at Pepperdine, played at GCU, had limited minutes in his first year, but he has a lot of talent. 13.4 points a game, 5.9 rebounds, plays bigger than his size, I'd want to say, and is a two-way guard, good on defense as well. So the starting five, really great, like you said, question marks on the bench, but they have some kind of high upside guys that they can turn to. And if Nevada's going to win the conference, this would probably be the year.
Yep, I do think that they have a prime opportunity because it does feel like it is a conference with a lot of transition that is a little bit more wide open. And when it comes to these guys, I'm feeling pretty good about New Mexico. I mean, it was immediate what we saw in terms of year number 1 out of their new coaching regime. As Jake Hall, you mentioned him, he averaged 16 points per game last season. And I'm just really impressed in general with the way that New Mexico was able to bring back so many guys from a season ago. I've always been a big fan of Eric Olin as a coach, and I think it's going to be huge. It looks like Chris Howell is going to be back for another year. He was a guy that was so instrumental in UC San Diego's success. Obviously, you lose Tomislav Bujan, but Uriah Tente was a guy that was able to give you about 10.5 points per game. They bring in a few nice mix and match pieces via the transfer portal, and I think that for New Mexico, especially if Rytis Petratus is able to be what he was over at Air Force a few seasons ago, this is a team that's going to be competing right there at the top of the conference.
They're the crown of the conference right now, right? They have the most history. They have the best home court advantage. They return the best player in the league. Like a lot of the expectations are on New Mexico. Rapid fan base. Jake comes back. They bring in their brother Dax Hall. They bring in Hudson Mays from Olean's stopping grounds in UC San Diego. Eman Sojovic is going to have to step up in the middle. He's a redshirt freshman. They play some good non-conference games. They play against Utah State, Santa Clara. So there's some opportunities for wins in the non-conference. So really high on this New Mexico team. They made it in the semifinal of the NIT last year. Just missed the NCAA tournament a year ago. They're kind of on the next 4 out as far as the bubble teams go. But yeah, a lot of upside, pretty high floor as well. The question mark is in the front court, but I don't know if you can get really much better guard play with what they have.
Yep, I'm right there with you. I'm feeling very good about this team. And we've got one team remaining. If I read your profile correct, you've got some ties to Grand Canyon. And for Grand Canyon, this is a team that is certainly spended. They bring in Jaden Zimmerman, a nice 15 point per game score over at Quinnipiac. Dylan Darling 2 years ago over at Idaho State was just a dude out there in the Big Sky. He hit that buzzer beater that sent St. John's to the Sweet 16 of the NCAA tournament. They bring back Makai Williams, Tyler Barron. He's coming over from Tulsa. Blake Barkley. He was a double-figure scorer over at East Tennessee. If Amarian Dixon could be what he was 2 seasons ago over at Robert Morris, loving this team. For Grand Canyon, the one issue that they had last year was that three-point shooting, but they're a good rebounding team. They're a rock-solid defense, and this is a well-coached team that year in and year out, in my opinion, is going to be towards the top of the conference with the way that they spend.
Yeah, GCU. I'm an alum of the Lopes, and not to sound biased here, but like this is the team, right? It seems like they have infinite NIL.
And you know as well as I do, that home court environment, it's like a rave at a Steve Aoki concert. It's insane.
It is good. They might sometimes they're a little too like New Mexico and San Diego State. They're really mean. GCU fans they like to have fun, but still it's a very loud environment. One of the best enjoyable atmospheres in college basketball. If you haven't been to GCU Arena, it's a must go. And yeah, I think just bringing back Makai Williams, he actually entered the transfer portal early, and they were able to bring him back. Averaged 14 points a game, really good ball handler, really good on defense. They bring, like you said, Dylan Darling, who after he hit that game-winning layup. Efrey Demerol was really good as a freshman last year. He's going to take a next step. Bringing in Amaron Dickerson from USC. Amar Baloo, former 5-star recruit, last played at Wake Forest. Blake Barkley is they didn't really have a guy that can really score in isolation last year. GCU, they relied on Ty Grant Foster for a long time to be their ISO scorer. They kind of missed that. Barkley's a guy who can create his own offense, can drive, can get to the lane. Micah Tucker from Georgia State's and also another guy, averaged 13 points at Georgia State last year. So I think they kind of fixed that problem where they would go on really long runs without scoring last year. They just didn't have a guy that would just want the ball and being able to score. With bringing guys like Barkley, Darling, and Tucker to go with Williams and Demerol, then you have a glue guy with Dickerson off the bench who'll provide that same tenacity defense that GCU was so good at last year. Top 50 defense in Ken Palm. Caleb Shaw is a glue guy. He returns. He's a good three-point shooter, tough rebounder, great on the defensive end. I think this team is probably the best GCU team that talent-wise or on paper that I have seen, and I'm really excited. I'm actually going to give credit to the coaching staff too for what they did in the non-conference schedule. They play Santa Clara at home. They play a true road game at Memphis. They play Oklahoma State, and they also play a neutral site game against Florida, who will be a top 5, top 10 team next season. So they have some opportunities to have some big non-conference wins, and I think they're the favorite going into the Mountain West Conference this year. Bryce Drew is a great coach, and they have a great home court environment. And if they glue together, they can be special.
Oh, I'm right there with you. The way that they have shelled out for this program, I am very bullish on them. They need to fix the three-point shooting with the likes of Barkley and company coming in. I'm feeling really good about Grand Canyon, and I'm feeling great that we had you on the podcast today, Austin. You're doing such great work over at Mid-Major Madness. You're getting set for the upcoming college basketball season and following all the chaos that we're getting with these fifth-year guys as well. Austin doing an amazing job taking a look at this great sport, and was great to be able to get him on today. So big thanks, Austin, for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Up next, it is the Mountain West Conference Preview Edition, so I give you my projector finish for the Mountain West. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always a pleasure to be able to get Austin Montgomery aboard. I know that he is doing such an incredible job taking a look at the Mountain West. He is doing a great job all 12 months out of the year looking at this amazing sport of college basketball. It's not been easy with all these court cases, and we're seeing a lot of hoopla with the Mountain West being very, very much new look, but he's doing a tremendous job over at Mid-Major Madness. I know that he does some great work with the Aaron Torres podcast as well, and was great to be able to get him on today. So a big thanks to Austin for joining me in last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you my projector or finish for the Mountain West. As per usual, I'm going to be leaving this as a standalone podcast, so anything that we saw over the weekend in college basketball, I will be polishing that up on the podcast tomorrow, because I do want to give you guys as much sparkle and shine as humanly possible with these conference previews, whether you're listening to this in the middle of August, September, October, heck, maybe even just after the season started in November. I want to make sure that you're getting great insights and that you are able to get something that is going to be able to help you out for the upcoming college basketball season. So we're going to be making sure that that gets all taken care of, and I do think that this is going to be a great new look Mountain West this season. So without further ado, let's dive in on my projector or finish. At number 10 in my projector or finish for the Mountain West, I'm going to be going with Air Force. They are dead last, and they are actually going to be returning a lot of minutes from a season ago. They now bring in Joe Crispin to be able to try to clean things up after he was an assistant over at Penn State, because the old regime, it was not great to say the least. Air Force was going nowhere fast, but even though they bring back a lot of guys from last year, are these guys any good? Cam Sanders was a guy that was able to give you 12.5 points per game. They weren't the world's worst three-point shooting team like Lucas Hobbin was able to give you 11 plus points per contest. Eli Robinson is going to be back, but you have a 7-footer in Wesley Chalkowski who's allergic to rebounding. Like, this guy throughout his career averages like 2 to 2.5 rebounds per game. Like, what are we doing here? So, you don't have a lot of size down low. This was a team that was 363rd in terms of points per possession on offense, 352nd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and they're running it back. Not great to say the least. I do not see a lot of upside here for Air Force. I love what the Air Force does for our country. Air Force basketball was very not profitable for you, and I don't think that it's going to be this year. Number 10 in my projector or finish, we're going to be going with Air Force. Number 9 in my projector or finish for the Mountain West Conference, I'm going to be going with UTEP. I do think that it's going to be a little bit of a rough season for them. Now, they're going to have a little bit of a travel advantage being out there in the great state of Texas. Most of these teams are more in the mountainous part of the country, though I will say El Paso pretty close to New Mexico, so maybe not as much travel as a lot of people might think, but I just still have my question marks with this team down low, and they return 0 minutes from a season ago in a team that wasn't even great out there in Conference USA. Leaf Muller is going to be coming over after he was a rock-solid player over at Evansville, a 6'7" point forward, was able to dole out 4 assists, 4 boards, so he's going to be able to give some versatility. This has been a UTEP team that just, ever since we've had the Coach Golding regime in, they just have not been great on the boards. Last year, they were 331st in terms of rebound percentage, 324th in terms of points per possession. I do think that they're going to be a little bit better this year. They do bring in Alex Michaelo, I'm sure I got that last name incorrect, but a 7-footer at the junior college ranks who was able to be relatively rock solid. They also are going to be looking to a few guys from William & Mary. They're going to be bringing in Reese Miller, who was able to average 12 points, sold out right around 2.5 assists per contest, and Ryan Jackson, I believe they shot 52.4% from 3. Wasn't a big sample size, 7.3 rebounds per game, but that's going to be able to help them out a little bit. Jace Whiting was a double-figure scorer over at Weber State, has some familiarity. He was with Boise State, I know for sure, and I think UNLV, so a little bit of familiarity in the Mountain West, but still, I think that's going to be an uphill battle for these guys. At number 9 in my projector or finish for the Mountain West Conference, I'm going to be going with UTEP. Number 8 in my projector or finish for the Mountain West Conference, I do go with UC Davis. It's a big step up for them coming over from the Big West. Now, Connor Sevilla should be back from season ago, 13.5 points, shot just below 40% from 3-point range, and they're going to be bringing over a guy that I really like that was able to tear it up at the other ranks with regards to San Francisco in Vanani Abasi. Hopefully you got that correct. 5 points, 4 rebounds per game. He was over there in the WCC. Additionally, he was shooting about 40% from 3-point range. It is very clear that this team is going to be looking to pop it and lock it from 3. And the hallmark of UC Davis last few seasons out there in the Big West, generating turnovers, 29th in the country in terms of turnovers generated on a per possession basis. They should have a lot of that backbone back, especially with Braden Fajemi, who was able to average for the team right around about 4.3 assists, 7 points per game, began his career over at Central Arkansas. I like his upside there. Clarence Matsamba, he was on Tennessee's bench over the last year or two. He's going to be coming in, and he should be able to help hold down the fort as well. And Omar Savanic, hopefully got that correct, about 5.5 points, 3 rebounds per game. You also have Ian Eso-Isis, who he should be able to give you a little bit of size at 6'8" as well. So I think that UC Davis could be a little bit improved on the glass. They've got a little bit more NIL than a lot of those Big West teams that they would have coming in, but I still don't think that they have the resources of the top Mountain West teams. I do think that's going to be a little bit of an uphill struggle for them. So at number 8 in my projector or finish for the Mountain West Conference, I'm going to be going with UC Davis. Number 7 in my projector finish for the Mountain West Conference, I'm going to be going with Wyoming. I was thinking of putting San Jose State here, but you're going to hear them a little bit later on. I'm feeling bullish on them, and I do like Sundance Wicks as a coach. We saw what he was able to do in that 1 year over at UW Green Bay. Obviously has a lot of roots for Wyoming, being an assistant a few seasons back, and they do return their top 2 rebounders, Caden Bennett and Nasir Meyer. Both of these guys gave you about 4.9 rebounds per game, about 13 points per game. With regards to Meyer, 2.5 assists per contest, shot 35% from 3. Bennett was a 35.5% three-point shooter. This Wyoming team is going to build their bones on defense. With Sundance Wicks, you're not going to be getting a team that's going to be like absolutely running and gutting it, and they were a good team on the boards as well. This was a bunch of 64th in the country in terms of rebound percentage last year, despite not having a lot of size. They've got Redon Saunders, who he was over at UL Monroe last year, 10.5 points, right around about 4 boards, shot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. He helps out Uriah Rojas, who he was able to give the team 6 points per game off the bench. He should be able to help out. And Gavin Goris, I like him. He was able to average about 3.5 rebounds per game. They didn't go out there and get a lot by the transfer portal. Parker Garretts, who was over at Washington State, he's got some size. He didn't necessarily see a lot of playing time, but I think that he's going to help this team out a little bit. But I do need just a little bit more to be feeling a little bit more bullish about this program. I think that Wyoming is going to be solid. They're going to be a pesky team. In the end, I just don't know if they have the scoring to pull out a lot of those close games that you're going to play in the Mountain West. They do have a great home court advantage with the elevation, though. So in terms of my projector or finish at number 7, I'm going to be going with Wyoming. Number 6 in my projector or finish for the Mountain West Conference, I'm going with San Jose State. I know that San Jose State was a wet match in a dark cave last year, but this is a bunch that they had so many injuries from last season, and now they get back Robert Viola as well. He was over at Minnesota. I know he's dealt with a little bit of injury. Getting him back after a few seasons ago, 7.5 points, 7.5 boards, 1.4 blocks per game in this Tim Miles system, and in Coach Miles, I am going to be trusting in. I do think that he gets the most out of his teams. A few years ago, you go back, he got San Jose State to 20 plus wins. That is not easy to be able to do. You've got Javon Hanna back as well. He was limited to 2 games last year. That's how bad Murphy's Law hit this team. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong for them. They're going to now finally have some healthy pieces. Recognize that you do lose your top scorer in Kobe Garland from a season ago. That said, Joey Chamea, he was over at Arkansas State last year. He was a rock solid scorer for them with right around about 9.9 points per contest. He's going to be able to elevate them. Scotty Middleton is a guy that I like as well. 7 points, 4 boards, shot about 37% from 3-point range over at Tulane last year. Long and winding road for him, and they need a clean bill of health from, I'm going to get this name incorrect, but the man from Algeria that comes over from Colombia, Zanu Endi Bedri. He was able to average 8.5 points, 5.5 boards, 2 assists per contest, right around 6'9", a little bit of a combo player that's able to pop in and lock it from 3, and then the X Factor, Mookie Cook, a former top 50 recruit, began his career over at Oregon, spent a little bit of time dealing with injury over at San Francisco last year, but he was out there on the floor, shot 39.5% from 3, 7 points, 4 boards. Compare that up with KJ Martin, a 39% three-point shooter over at Tulsa in a small sample size last year. I think there's a lot of upside here and a lot of room to grow for our good friends at San Jose State. I always call them San Jose State intentionally, but number 6 in my projector finish for the Mountain West, I'm going with San Jose State. Number 5 in my projector finish for the Mountain West, I'm going with Hawaii. Now, they do lose a few pieces from a season ago. Big Fish Johnson, the 7-footer, was so big for this team. A team that was 12th in defensive rebound percentage. Teams only grabbed 23.3% of their missed shots as an offensive rebound, but they are going to be bringing back Isaiah Kerr, who was able to give the team about 6.5 points per game off the bench, and they got some NIL money in the offseason. I know that went through the Hawaiian legislation. Bull Dango, who's a 6'11" big man that comes over from UC San Diego, he was able to average 10.5 points, 5 boards. He's able to give you some 3-point shooting. And then Marcus Adams, guy that began his career over at Kansas and BYU, never really got out there on the floor for them, but a former top 75 recruit, limited to 14 games last season over at Arizona State. Look at what he did 2 seasons ago over at Cal State Northridge. J.K. Season, 16 points, 5 boards, steal per contest, shot 39.5% from 3-point range. That's a 6'6", 6'7", a little bit of an energizer bunny guy. Zach Davidson was limited due to injury last year, but when he was out there on the floor for Northern Arizona, he was their top scorer with about 14 points, 5 rebounds per game. I'm feeling bullish about the guys that they're bringing in. Chance Trujillo, he was over at Utah Tech last season. He was a nice 13-point per game guy. He's able to dole it out, and I just believe in Aaron Ganat as a coach. You know that the defense is going to be there for Hawaii. They were good at getting to the free throw line, maybe felt a little bit too much themselves, and Hawaii maybe got a little bit too fast for their own good. They're probably going to need to slow it down just a touch with the transfers that they brought in. A lot of guys coming in from a slower system, but that's it. With regards to this projected or finish for the Mountain West, I think Hawaii is going to be competitive right there. I've got them Mambo number 5 in my projected or finish. Number 4, my projector or finish for the Mountain West Conference, I'm going to be going with Nevada. With Nevada, it's been a little bit up, down all around for them the last few seasons under Steve Alford, who obviously has had a lot of success in the Mountain West going all the way back to his time at New Mexico. They were 43rd in the country in terms of defensive rebound percentage, and they led the country free throws attempted per offensive play. This is a team that's going to look to get to the free throw line, and they're going to look to utilize their size. Elijah Price, he is back after a season ago. 13 points, 8.5 boards, right around about 1.7 blocks per contest. I love the pickup of Sty Phipps. He was a guy that began his career over at Grand Canyon. Last season, he was able to tear it up when he was over in, I believe, the WCC ranks with about 13.5 points, 5 assists, 6 rebounds. Didn't have a lot around him, but still he was able to have himself a nice season. Keenan Kenzie, he was able to log about 11 points, a little bit of a steal per contest. He's a guy that I like. And then Vaughn Weems is back after he had 10 points, 4 boards, a steal per game, shot 38% from three-point range. And then Peter Benjai, he was over at Cal Poly last season, a team that just absolutely ran in and gunned it for Nevada. They played a little bit more slowly the last few years. Bringing in Benjai, I think is going to crank up the tempo just a little bit for this team. 13 points, 4 boards, 3.5 assists, a little bit over steal per contest. Feels like this team has a little bit more depth than what they did a season ago. Still have a few question marks with regards to that main facilitator spot, but I think that Phipps is going to be able to do a solid job there to be able to get Nevada towards the top half of this conference. Number 4, my projector or finish for the Mountain West, I go with Nevada. Number 3 in my projector or finish for the Mountain West Conference, we're going to be going with UNLV. It's all about the Mac show. Sebastian Mack, the return of the Mac, as he last season was over at Missouri. He was only able to average about 7 points per game. You go back to what he did over at UCLA out there on the West Coast during the 2023-24 season. Guy was a bona fide scorer with about 12 points per contest. Not a guy that's really going to pop it and lock it from three-point range. So the three-point shooting that you lose with Dre Gibbs Lawhorn transferring out, that needs to be filled a little bit. MJ Thomas, though, he's going to fortify the seam down low. He was a nice big man over at New Orleans. He was averaging about 10 points, 8 rebounds, and Master P is now part of that New Orleans program, so yay, verily there. Tyron Jones, he's a guy that I like. He was able to log about 12 points, 5 boards, a steal, 2.2 blocks per contest. This team is going to be one of the toughest teams down low in the Mountain West, and then additionally, you've got Isaac Williamson. He returns after logging about 8.5 points per contest as a part-time starter. You've got Cam Miles, who he was over at Florida State last year, averaging 5.5 points per game. And Tyler Harris, I really think, is the X factor. I go back to what he was able to do a few seasons ago over at Washington when he was shooting 49.5% from three-point range. I don't know if he's going to duplicate that. He's certainly better than what he showed over at Vanderbilt last season, was in a little bit of a reduced role where he was averaging more around about 5.5 points per game. And then the kicker is, can you get a healthy Allen Breed? When he was over at Providence, he had some moments of brilliance. He has been in the Will Wade system over at McNeese and NC State last few seasons. Was able to average 4.5 points, shot 34.5% from three. I think in a little bit more of a lead role, he can be very good for this team. I think that UNLV, sky's looking up. I've always liked Josh Pastner as a coach. I felt like he got a raw deal over at Memphis. I think that he's going to be able to lead UNLV towards the top of this conference. I've got UNLV at number 3 in my projector or finish for the Mountain West. And number 2 in my projector or finish for the Mountain West, I'm going to be going to Mexico. The return of Jake Hall is absolutely massive. For Hall, 16.5 points, 3 boards, shot 44% from 3. He was a heart and soul of this team last season, and I really am a believer in Eric Olin as a coach. We saw what he was able to do over at UC San Diego a few years ago, getting that team to the NCAA tournament, and now he gets sort of like a coach on the floor and Chris Howell back. Howell was limited just 11 games last season. He was supposed to bring a lot of the just Olin style onto the floor for this team. Him coming back, I mean, 5.5 points, 3.5 boards, a steal per contest. It doesn't sound like it's a big deal, but he's that classic glue guy that you really need. He is going to be huge for this team. Rightus Petratus, I always get that name incorrect, but when he was over at Air Force many moons ago, he was averaging about 15.5 points, 6 boards, 3.5 assists per game. A little bit of a long and winding road. Spent some time over at Cal and a few other places where he didn't find his footing, and he was dealing with a little bit of injury. Big clean bill of health is going to be big for him. And then additionally, you bring over from a little bit more of a mid-major rank, Tande Fasasi. I believe that he was over at Drexel, 12 points, 4 boards, 2.5 assists, a little bit over a steal per contest. So he comes over from the CAA ranks. And then Hudson Mays, he was a guy that was able to average about 11 points, 5.5 boards, steal per contest, relatively solid 3-point shooter. I think that this New Mexico team, even though you lose some of those ancillary pieces from the backcourt, for from the season ago. Obviously, Tomislav Vucic being on the fold, that's going to be hurting you. He was a double-double machine, but the way that they were able to fortify themselves down low and having Uriah Tanate, hopefully you got that correct, giving you over 10 points per game, that is huge for a team that was in the top 65 in terms of points per possession last year. They were 44th in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Very balanced team, and I think they might generate even more turnovers, much like that UC San Diego team did under Olin 2 seasons ago. In my projector of finish for the Mountain West, I've got New Mexico. Number 2 in my projected order of finish. And then number 1 in my projected order of finish for the Mountain West, Grand Canyon. This team is spending out the wazoo. If you've ever been to a Grand Canyon home game, they've got one of the best mid-major home court advantages in all of college basketball. It's like a rave. It's like a Steve Aoki concert when you go into there. And now they bring back Mekhi Williams, who was able to average 14 points, 2.5 assists per game. And who knows, with all these fifth-year guys, I wouldn't be surprised if Grand Canyon gets in on one of those guys, because they want to be back in the NCAA tournament in the same way that a man in the desert needs water. Like, you take a look at this team, and they were rock solid on the defensive side, things that are on the boards. Top 25 team in terms of rebound percentage, 28th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. What destroyed them was three-point shooting. They were 286th in the country last year with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, just a hair above 30%. Jaden Zimmerman, he should be able to help out after he comes over from Quinnipiac. 15 points, 2.3 assists per contest. Omaha Bailu, he's a former top 25 recruit, began his career over at Iowa State, had some issues over there, goes on over to Wake Forest, solid 6.5 point per game score, shot 37% from three. That'll immediately elevate this team from distance. He's got size at like 6'7", 6'8", and then I love the pickup of Dylan Darling. He was the guy that hit that shot for St. John's over Kansas that led them to the Sweet 16. And you go back to what he did 2 years ago when he was a man over at Idaho State. I know that it's a lower level of basketball, but 19.8 points, 5.5 assists, 1.7 steals per contest. Effie Demery, hopefully I got that correct. He was able to give the team 8.5 points, 5 boards, and a block per contest last year, so that fortifies you down low. Tyler Bennard, he's a very old guy. I know that he was like serving our military or something like that, so a feel-good story. He was over at Tulsa last year where he was grabbing about 5+ rebounds per game. You bring in Blake Barkley, he was averaging 14.5 points per game over at East Tennessee. He's a 38% three-point shooter. Again, that'll elevate the scoring for the team. And Marion Dixon, he wasn't able to see a lot of playing time over at USC last year, only saw 8 games of action. You go back to what he did 2 years ago over at Robert Morris, it's going to be iron sharpening iron because he was really good down low. 2.3 blocks, 6 boards, 13 points per game. Grand Canyon has all the goods. They finally have the three-point shooting that they didn't a season ago. I think Grand Canyon wins this conference. I've got them number 1 in my projector finish for the Mountain West. And that'll wrap things up for the Mountain West Conference Preview Edition right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways to be able to throw those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, LRCM, the name does not matter. So as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I am with you guys every single day on this podcast. The conference previews are going to be continuing on. We've got some great guests that are going to be coming up in the coming days and coming weeks for those. Plan on doing the Patriot League relatively soon. And have to give a big shout out to our guy, Austin Montgomery. He's doing such great work over at Mid-Major Madness. He joined me in the last segment. It's my job to get you guys prepared for what I think is going to be the greatest college basketball season of all time, because we do have ourselves a lot that is going on here in the off season. We're going to keep you guys abreast of all that once we get back in season. Picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So I do appreciate you tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.